Welcome to the Ryoknits podcast. My name is Rhiannon. I'm a knitter living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin with my wife and cat. And I'm glad that you're here. Today I want to just give you some updates. It is March. I am trying my hardest to get back onto a regular schedule of podcasting just because I want to. I know I'm not, no one's expecting me to, or there's no external pressure on me to do that, but I want to. And so I'm sitting down to record today, even though I totally feel like I don't have a lot to share. So I will have, a little bit to talk about with knitting, and then, just a couple other miscellaneous kind of update stuff. So, I hope you're comfortable. I hope you've got your knitting or your crochet or whatever it is that you use to keep your hands busy. And I hope that you get a little, inspiration or motivation out of this. I have one finished object, which is possibly my first finished object of the year. I don't pick up and knit a project consistently until it's finished. What I like to do, I've noticed, is have several projects on the go, and then when I lose interest in one, I'll set it aside for a month or so, maybe even only a week, and then I'll work on the others. And so it's kind of a cyclical thing, and I get to where I have a lot of finished objects kind of happening all at once because of just that cyclical nature. I get in a mood to finish things, and right now I'm totally in a mood to finish things. So maybe that was inspired by finishing this sweater, maybe not, but I will show you this. This is my lento. If you are unfamiliar with this pattern, it's just a simple top-down raglan, but it's knitted a very, very loose gauge. So I used size 10, US size 10 needles, which is, let me see if I can just check real quick how many millimeters that would be. Oh, how odd. I think that's 6 millimeter needles. And I say how odd. Oh yes, 6 millimeter needles. I just, this needle gauge, I just realized that 9 and 10 are here. So it goes straight from 8 to 10 and a half, which I honestly don't know why US needles go 10 and a half and then 11, and there's a difference of 1.5 millimeters anyway. So that's a very, that's a big needle for me, especially. I'm used to, something in the US 4 to 7 range, I would say, and 5s are kind of my happy place. But, this raglan has a double folded brim that kind of gives it a little bit of structural integrity, I guess. And then it's knit with fingering weight and mohair held together, which a lot of patterns do that and they don't make a very loose gauge, but this one sort of takes advantage of mohair's fluffiness to fill in gaps, and you just knit it very loose. So I'll stand up and give you a better look at this. So this is one that I think I had all but the very bottom done last time. I won't review all the details of it, but you can see it is a simple raglan. I opted for shorter sleeves because why not? And I knit it in one color of fingering weight, but I did stripe the mohair. So every, I think 10 rows or something like that. I just arbitrarily decided to mix mohairs to make it a little more interesting. And also because as I was swatching, I was like, well, I have a bunch of random blue mohairs and I can't decide which one looks best with this, because I really like the, this stripe right here, I would say is very true to the color of the fingering weight yarn that I, without the mohair. But then I'm digging on how this kind of deepens it. This has kind of a very marled effect because it's so much lighter. Yeah, so I was like, I like it kind of deeper. I like it with this marled effect. I like the kind of true to color. And then this teal mohair sort of just made it a little more blue and less purple. And so I just went with all of it. That's my first finished object. The next thing I've got to show is a nearly finished object. so now we're on to works in progress already. I was making a Sophie shawl with multiple colors, and here it is. So something I wanted to do that ended up being a little bit of yarn chicken was, rather than having it just split, you see how the lowest part is right here, rather than just having it split down the middle and have, you know, half one color and then half the others, I almost wanted the striped section to be like a swatch, almost like if you had a gray scarf and then you just painted over it with some stripes, right? So the very end of it is also gray, which I don't know if that was necessary. It doesn't hurt, but it, you know, I think what I really like just is how it's asymmetrical right there. In the middle, and all of these stripes are the same width. There is a bit of an optical illusion with the dark ones looking, the dark ones do look narrower, I think, and then also the taller ones look narrower than the shorter ones, if that makes sense. So like where there's more width to the shawl, this band looks narrower than this band or this band here. So that was interesting. And so I didn't expect that, but you know, I'm happy with it. And so this will just be a shop sample for a yarn store where I often teach, and I just have to weave in all the ends and block it. But I knit this with woolstock worsted, and the colors are, I think, Loon Lake, Spring Ice, and something Frost or Fog or something like that. Yeah, all of the colors are very evocative of nature, and that's kind of in keeping with their the brand, you know. So yeah, so that is finished, and well, nearly finished. I had been working on a shawl called Vertex Unite. It's a pattern by Stephen West. It's one of his older patterns, or oldest patterns. It's going to be kind of awkward to hold it up, I think, because at the end of everything, you pick up all the stitches around the perimeter of the whole thing and you knit an I-cord edge. So I'm in the process of that. So here it is, working on this I-cord edge. Luckily I read, I looked on Ravelry at other people's Vertex Unite shawls and their project notes, and somebody said it took him 3 days to do the I-cord edge. And when I saw that, it actually gave me like a sense of relief of like, okay, I don't have to like rush through this. Like I can just take my time. It's going to take a while. It's a design feature that, you know, is not quick and instant gratification, but it is very easy to do. It's very meditative TV kind of knitting, and you know, it's fine to just take your time with it, and you know, it's so worth it, I think, because you get that just beautiful delineation of the whole thing, and it pulls all those colors together. So I'm finishing this up. I think it's going to be it's going to get a lot of use. And you know, it's funny because these colors are not you know, they're all colors that are left over from other things that I've made, but they're not the kind of colors that I often think of myself as wearing, like especially the beige. I mean, the beige for me will always be a background color or a contrast color or something like that. But you know, I decided to put a big swath of beige in there and throw in some mohair and just make it really soft. And I wanted to embrace kind of the playing with the different textures of yarn that I had, instead of trying to make it you know, all consistently every section feels the same, because that's something I really think is fun. And Stephen West totally encourages you to, you know, he calls it a mohair dare, but I think, you know, just mixing bases is fun, and it results in really cool kind of like tactile projects that are, you know, it's tactile as you're making it, not just as you're wearing it, but certainly that too. And as I was finishing it up, my my wife said, you know, you're gonna share that, right? and I was just like, wow, okay, so yes, of course. But you know, I was thinking like this color combo is a little bit it's not the first thing I would think of, I guess, is, you know, taking these colors from various projects I've done and putting them together. But the fact that I've done that made, you know, I think it will match things in my wardrobe, obviously. And I wouldn't have thought these were their colors either, but if they want to wear it, then great, you know. It looks, you know, I was told it looks very cozy, and I would have to agree. It actually is very cozy. And I think, you know, part of that is the way that mohair softens the color of that sort of beige yarn. And then also the Jamieson and Smith is very heathered. And then I think like the purple on purple is like a soft stripe effect versus, you know, something that would be like black and neon yellow or something, right? Like I think there's a softer effect to it. So let me just gesticulate a whole bunch, but I mean, basically, you know, it's almost done and I'm really excited about it. So yeah, so that's 3 projects. Let's see, what else do I need to, or do I want to update you on? You don't need to hear any of it. I don't need to tell you. But let's see. So okay, so I had, I think, shown that I was working on a pair of socks that were my like car knitting. Maybe I'll just insert a picture because I do think that project is in the car. But the Midnight Dancer socks by Sari Norlin are actually turning out really great. I was in doubt about the ruffly collar, but I think worst case scenario, I'm just gonna have to strand some elastic through the top to kind of keep them standing up. But these are totally house socks. They are not, I don't think they're shoe socks. You know, I don't know. I've seen people take their hand knitted socks and wear them with like, you know, a strappy shoe, like a Mary Jane, or even a high heel. I don't wear those kinds of shoes. I can kind of imagine wearing them with like a low top sneaker, but yeah, I don't know. Tell me how you style your socks. How do you style your hand knit socks? Do you wear them in a way that shows them off, or do you just, you know, like I feel like I wear them and it's like all of the pleasure is in like the way that it feels on my foot. No one can see it. There's no, you know, it's not something that I show off or that, you know, I think it's noticed, but I notice it because they feel great. So, and you know, I just pick colors that I like, and that also enables me to use colors that I wouldn't use in, you know, like garments or, you know, something like a scarf that was going to be near my face. So I can, you know, I've made socks in colors that I wouldn't make clothes in. So I'd love to know like about your just like sock, if you knit yourself socks, like how do you wear them, how do you style them? Yeah. So let's see what else. I have been also working on the Woodlands pullover. So this is a drop shoulder, so right now it just looks like a great big square. It's a sweater for my wife, and I've got to this, the bottom you do a stitch detail that's kind of like what's at the top but different. And there's a really clever thing in this pattern where you are, I don't want to give it away, but like basically you are alternating, you know, brown and blue for a line, or, you know, the main color and the second contrast color. And then you do something with slip stitches that accentuates it. Anyway, I just think it's very cool because as I was reading the instructions, I was like, huh, why am I doing that? And then I realized it really highlights the that stripe. So yeah, it's a really neat pattern. I just picked it back up. I've been having all kinds of gauge issues with it, which maybe you can even see in the way that it's not hanging like a very flat piece of fabric. There's definitely some memory right along, you know, here of just, and it really begins where I joined it in the round. You can see that gauge struggle playing out on the fabric. I do think blocking it will relax and it will be okay. But for whatever reason, and I've sort of landed on it must be the ply structure, because this twist is going counterclockwise rather than clockwise. But it just was very hard for me to get gauge. The gauge has felt very tight. The fabric has felt very dense. And at the same time, like, it's totally fine. It's not a bad kind of dense. And I just have to slow down. I think when you're knitting at a looser gauge, you can sort of, you know, zip along. And when you're knitting at a tighter gauge, I think it can become very painful if you're trying to rush it and go really fast. And so, you know, I do want to knit things at a tighter gauge in general because, you know, not tighter than what the pattern says per se, but just like, I think, you know, the tighter the gauge you knit it at, the longer it's going to last, generally. That's a big generalization. There are other factors that affect it, but, you know, if, you know, all other things being equal, if you had, you know, one sweater at one gauge and one at the other, same yarn, you know, same needles, all that stuff, the denseness of the fabric, I think, will affect how much it's gonna like pill and, you know, just sort of like shed fiber over time. So yeah, I am just like embracing the fact that this is a denser fabric, and it's not excruciatingly painful. It's just a little uncomfortable, and I think that has to do with the way I'm trying to like rip through my knitting really fast. So I am getting close to the body being done on here, which means that after that it's just sleeves and neckband. So closing in on the finish line on that one too. The final project I want to share with you is a sweater that I put on my list of things I really wanted to knit this year. And, you know, even more specifically than just knitting the pattern Vargo, I really wanted to make it with let lopi because I've been wanting a lopi sweater. So if you're new here, I moved to Wisconsin 2 years ago now, or a year and a half ago now. And before that, I lived in the Pacific Northwest in Portland, Oregon. So I was used to a different climate, and I mostly knit things that were fingering, sport, DK weight, garment wise, and really could not fathom having like a bulky weight or chunky weight sweater or even an Aran weight, even though they're beautiful. And I love let lopi. I love the way it looks, the aesthetic of it, of, you know, Icelandic sweaters. I think, you know, as I learn more about various knitting traditions, I find that the Scandinavian, like Icelandic, Finnish, Norwegian, those designs appeal to me a lot because they usually have few colors. The color work is usually pretty minimal or simple. There, you know, it's either very geometric or it's just sort of like minimalist in a way. I think that, you know, I like toothier yarns. Anyways, I love this pattern and I wanted let lopi because guess what? Wisconsin is very cold. So I can use really thick, warm Icelandic wool sweaters now. So here I am. Oh, it looks great on camera. Wow. I think it looks very sharp, which is nice because I don't think it looks that sharp in person. But something about the lighting there, you can see, oh, what a sharp contrast that is, and how lovely. So here I am doing, this is a 2-color pattern. I'm actually using 3 different shades of blue. And this blue I am only using for the collar and the cuffs and the bottom hem, because this one is not Icelandic wool. So I wanted to have something just a little softer on my neck. I hope that that does the trick, you know, and that this, because I think I will probably not be wearing this exactly next to skin. I will always have like a t-shirt or something underneath it, you know, just for warmth, you know, it's good to layer. So this is just the beginning of really the color work and the shoulders. And as you can see, it's got like a good fitted neck, which I like in a winter sweater. I think that's important. I don't like big open neck that I have to try to like cover, keep scarves or shawls over. I like a sweater to sit, you know, up around my neck. So yeah, and I'm just, and then because I was using this color, which wasn't exactly the same, I chose 2 shades of blue to, you know, just sort of draw it out. And it's funny because I sort of set this aside thinking, is this going to be just like the most boring sweater ever? Maybe because I just knit this blue sweater and because I've been knitting a lot of blue stuff. I mean, last year was like my year of blue. I just felt a little uninspired, and in the meantime I saw another pattern that I thought would also make a beautiful lopi sweater that I totally want to do, but I need to, you know, work on what is already on the needles, obviously. Yeah, so I don't know, I think I just got a little like, I'll just set it down and work on it later. But boy, it looks really sharp on the screen. You know, the lighter blue definitely in real life has a more a blurrier look, I would say. So maybe what I want to do is just, no, I don't want to change the colors. Maybe I just need to let it be what it's going to be. And, you know, not behave as this is my last chance to knit a sweater and get it right. It's okay. I have this strange tendency, I think, to not want to knit things that are the obvious color choice, or that are like, oh, that's boring, everything I own is those colors. But those are the things that I wear, you know? Those are the things that I know will match everything that I have. Yeah, I don't know what my problem is, but, you know, I think it's also sort of like my own reluctance to repeat a yarn and a colorway. So I bought this yarn originally to make a Felix cardigan, and I can't get that idea out of my head of like, I also want a Felix cardigan in this wonderful like ash heather color that's, you know, it's almost white, but gray. I can make a cardigan out of this, and it won't be boring to have both a cardigan and a pullover out of it, right? Right? I mean, they're 2 very different garments for 2 very different sort of occasions. I don't know. We'll see. I feel like I'm having this like, well, if I make a pullover in this color, then I can't make a cardigan in the same color. Even though the pullover will be color work and the cardigan will be one color. I don't know. I'm tripping, y'all. Okay. So yes, there's that. And I sort of went, not into it anymore. And set it aside. But it is actually really, really nice. And you can see that these colors have a lot of depth to them and are very pretty. And this is the Icelandic one that is just, I think, like a cascade yarn, or maybe it's a Quince & Co yarn. I'm not really sure. I have two yarns that look really similar, and they're both like smaller quantities that don't have the band on them, because one is left over from a project and one is someone gave me it just to try and like swatch with that yarn. Okay, so let's talk about what I've been reading. I just finished another fantastic audiobook, which I am 100% going to buy a paper copy of, a physical copy of, and also buy the audiobook. I want to have both because I like listening to the author read the book. So the book is Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey, and I may have like talked about this before as something I was going to read. But if you're unfamiliar with Tricia Hersey, her nickname is the Nat Bishop, and she talks about, you know, basically rest as an embodied practice, and like we all just need to rest, right? And we need to divorce ourselves and like extract ourselves out of the system of capitalism. Definitely you can tell she comes from the practice, or from like the background of being in ministry and having gone to seminary, and it's a very theological way of discussing things and talking, you know, just the way that phrases get repeated and embedded in different parts of the book. For example, I feel like it's very much like listening to a sermon, in a good way, not in a like, you know, you're going to hell kind of way, but it comes out of that tradition. So, you know, and she's very serious too about how it is essentially a political act, and it's a act of resistance, and it's an act of self-love to say no to things, and to like take breaks, and to give yourself time where you aren't doing anything or producing anything, you know, and to retrain your mind to not use words like lazy about yourself. And you know, I feel like this book has just really, I know it was going to have an impact on my life, but it really is, it really came into my life at the right moment, I would say, because for years I've been trying harder to just say no to things. Like a lot of people, I think I just learned how to take a lot more on than what I was actually capable of doing. And that's something that I think society trains us to do. You know, from a really young age, it's good to be people pleasing, and it's good to be someone that people can depend upon, you know, good old reliable Rhiannon. And it's considered essential for women, I think, to be even extra nice and extra giving and extra nurturing and extra, you know, available for whatever it is people want. All of this to say, I'm not saying that that's primarily what this book is about, but that's what I've been sort of on a wavelength of doing. And what I've tried to do is free up that time to, you know, really give myself permission to engage with what feeds my soul, rather than things that drain me, right? And so somehow I ended up with hobbies like knitting that are inherently productive. And I feel good doing my hobby, in part because at the end of it, I have a sweater I can wear, or I have socks, or my wife has socks, or you know what I mean? Like there's like somebody gets something at the end. So it's not just me doing a thing I like to do. It's also me doing a thing I like to do that has benefits. And I think it's very, very hard for some of us to turn off that internal voice that's saying you're lazy, or you're, you know, you're being very entitled. Who are you to just lay in a hammock all day long? But I mean, do you really think that no one should ever do that? You know, do you really think that people shouldn't just enjoy life. And one of the things that, Tricia Hersey says a lot in this book is that, you are a divine being. And so whether you're a spiritual person or not, I think you can take that however you want. But like, essentially, like, you were not put on this earth to be productive, to labor, to do things for other people. And depending on sort of the messaging you got, and maybe even the religious messaging you got early in life, or what you believe today, it can be hard to think that you weren't put on this earth to labor and to serve and to be of use, right? So there's a tension there. And I think that, the point being, though, is that it's not a universal, timeless reality. Capitalism is a system that we are born into. And so from the time we are born, there's this sense of urgency around time and timing. And one of the most beautiful examples she gives is that her own birthing experience was, a doctor who wanted to schedule a C-section because the baby was taking too long, and how, it's like even before people are born, someone is not happy with their sense of time. And like, your timing is bad, unborn child. You are taking too long. You need to hurry up and get out of this woman's body so that we can, do the things we need to do for you to be a healthy baby. But like, just let the baby be. But I know a lot of people who've had birthing experiences like that, where, a doctor said, you know what, I'm taking a vacation next month, so let's schedule your C-section this month. What? So it's that sort of stuff that it's like, it's subtle, and it's, I don't think anyone is saying like, oh, I want to indoctrinate your baby into capitalism, so I'm going to rush them to do this. But that stuff stacks up, right? It's like microaggressions. It piles up, and it means that from the time we're born, and sometimes even before, we're being kind of indoctrinated into this culture of everything is time-based, everything is urgent. You don't put off until tomorrow what you could do today, and, all these kind of phrases, right? Don't be lazy. And, just this sense of urgency that's put into everything. So I'm really marinating on that, like really, really trying to think about how I put a false sense of urgency into my knitting, for example, feeling like I have to accomplish so many things within so much time, right? And even to the point where I think I get kind of disappointed in myself if I say I'm going to knit, these specific things, and then I end up not knitting them, or I start them and don't finish them, or all of that stuff. It's like, it's a hobby and you're not hurting anyone. And, why is there this pressure and urgency about completion or finishing or having a product at the end? Or like how long it ought to take you, right? Like, it should take me a month to knit a shawl. Well, what if it takes me 6 months? What if it takes me 6 years? Who cares? So this book I highly recommend. And I realize this is, if you're new here, this is my standard way of reviewing a book. I do not talk about the beginning, middle, and end of the book. I try not to do spoilers. I try not to review things in such a way that it takes away from the mystery of what you're going to experience as you read it. But I try to give you a sense of what I'm getting out of it. So that I think is clear. I've already copied out a quote that I think had a lot of resonance for me. And I'm probably misquoting it, but the gist of it is, you're not resting to recharge so that you can be more productive. You're resting because it is your divine right to do so. And that is something like Right, on that note, or sort of like piggybacking off of what I just told you about this book, there's a few updates that I want to share. So the first one is that, you know, I have managed to sustain a new routine for a few months now. And that's really good because I said my, you know, kind of my New Year's resolution this year was to have routines that helped me, you know, just sort of feel like I'm in a groove of things, right? That there are things that don't fall by the wayside and I don't end up with like my life in chaos. So one routine that I have sustained that is now a full-on hobby, I look forward to it every day. If it doesn't happen, it would be really disruptive to my life at this point if it didn't happen, is every night I make myself a cup of tea and I read for a little bit while I sip herbal tea before going to sleep. And that's been, you know, like that just sort of loud car, sorry. I didn't expect that to happen. I didn't expect to create that hobby, but I'm glad I did. It's a really good habit to have. I think I'm falling asleep more easily. And you know, I do kind of tire my brain out a little bit, and also without looking at a screen. So that's nice. And it is nice to have that kind of ritual in that time. And I think that is, as much as sleep is the most obvious form of rest, I think that, you know, just sipping tea and reading a book is also a form of rest. I've also been thinking about having more, I think, small, uncomplicated projects, and having, you know, projects that go to specific places. So I've talked about, I have my car knitting socks, right? I also created another, like I just took another knitting bag and I put in another, you know, yarn and needles and stitch markers, whatever I needed, for a pair of vanilla socks, and left it at my office. So because obviously when you go into the office, when you work, you know, a hybrid schedule, it doesn't make sense to always be toting yarn back and forth or like a knitting project. And also, like, I just really need to have some knitting in some of the meetings, and I'm trying to like be in the office more. So now I've identified that as like, that's a space where it could have its own knitting project, and it should just be something simple. So that's another thing I've done. And I think, you know, like just kind of leaving it there and not worrying about it as, you know, this is my March sock project or whatever, right? Like this is just a sock project that lives at work, and there it is. And that feels more like how I was doing things before the pandemic. You know, I often had like a just at work knitting project. So it feels good to get back to that. I am off Instagram right now. I deleted the app from my phone. I needed a break because I feel like it was taking up a lot of my time, and it was giving a lot less than what it takes. So, you know, we've all watched Instagram transform, and I had created a few years back, I had created a knitting specific Instagram account, which ended up being what I wanted to look at more because I would interact with other makers and, you know, see what people were making. And part of the problem was just the way that Instagram has changed as an app. But also part of the problem is totally me and my FOMO, is that I cannot keep seeing new knitting patterns like every day. Another thing I want to make, because it just feeds like a part of my brain that is, you know, it's like, to me, that fear of missing out is closely related to things like envy or anxiety or, you know, insecurity, right? Because I start to go, well, why haven't I finished the things I've been working on so that I can get to that other thing? Or rather than enjoying the fact that I'm doing this long, slow, meditative I-cord bind off, I'm going, I just want to get done with this project so that I can do a different thing, right? And so I just needed to like distance myself from that and just get on out of there. So I did. But it, you know, I gotta be honest, the addiction is not just Instagram, it's my phone. And so I find myself, you know, looking at, like, I'm in various Slack and Discord groups where people talk about knitting. I find myself looking at those more. I'm looking at Ravelry a lot more on my phone. I'm just like looking at my phone all the time anyway, and that's frustrating. I don't have an answer for that. It's just something that I know, probably half of you are also addicted to your phones. So you know what I'm talking about. It just sucks, right? Yeah. And then speaking of Ravelry, I decided to do something that I had been wanting to do for a long time, which is I am going through my yarn cabinet, stash, etc., and cataloging my stash. So I did this once way back in 2019 or something, maybe. I started doing it and then I just stopped because I gave up. And this time I want to sort of chip away at it and keep going until I am done. But I also think that I might want to really take on another thing that I've put off doing, which is putting all my stash into like a Google sheet. I almost think a spreadsheet with filters could be more effective, because I know that Ravelry does that for you, but it is, sometimes I think I just want to see at a glance, like, how many single skeins of sock yarn do I have, right? Like, how many pairs of socks does that represent in a single place? Because it's there, it's on the shelf, I can go look at it, but sometimes I almost feel like I need the text and not the visual. And I know that Ravelry does have a list view, but it doesn't give me the information I want, unfortunately. I don't know. And you know, honestly, the more I look at Ravelry, the more it is just an app that there has been no interest by the company in making it more functional, more user-friendly. It's just old and cranky and creaky, and it's going to just stop being useful at some point in the very near future, I think. Because, I mean, not only have they been, pretty rude and dismissive of the disability community, but there's also just like so many limitations to what it does. And I feel like I will recommend using it for certain things, but for other things, it's like, it's just not even that good anymore. Like, it's just like, because now there are better functions, right? Like, I could get better information out of a Google sheet is what I'm thinking. For my purposes, because I don't always need to know like where I bought it or whatever. I just need to know like kind of what weight is it on paper, and then what gauge do I like to knit it at, that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, I don't know. I'm cataloging my stash. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. The last thing is, I don't usually do acquisitions because I think it's weird, but I wanted to show this because this was actually a gift. This is like knitter stationery, and it's just really cute. So jackandellapaper.com, they have these cards that have, I guess, 4 little designs: a sheep, a skein, a ball of yarn, another hank of yarn. So I don't know, thought it was cute, thought I would share. And that's really all I have for you today. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope you keep knitting and watch some really exciting stuff. And my oven is talking, so I think it's time to go. All right, bye.